of course, longtime sports writer for the Times. He's been coming in here with us on Wednesdays off and on for a number of years. If you got anything in the sports world, give us a call at 219-845-1100. We're going to take a tour. It's going to be kind of a mash 'em up quick tour of a bunch of stuff going on here. And if anybody sticks in any of these topics sticks in your flypaper, just give us that call. Al, I don't know if you've had time to review this one, but they're calling it a sports resort, $75 million sports resort coming to Portage by a guy by the name of Tony Chapla. And he choked back tears yesterday as he started to speak to the crowd gathered for the groundbreaking of the $75 million sport resort on Tuesday afternoon. He had taken the concept to Hobart and Chesterton. They didn't want it, but finally found a home in Portage. And 200 people came out, and they've got this dome with, I guess, another possible couple of domes attached to it. And they think they can make kind of a destination for youth sports. And what are they saying? They've estimated the $75 million investment by Catalyst Lifestyles will bring in excess of $60 million in revenue to the region annually. The highlight of the development will be a 165,000 square foot dome that can be used for sporting events and conventions. Plans call in the future for 2 other domes, each 60,000 square feet, that will house a water park and indoor drive-in theater. And about 168 acres straddling the Burns Waterway will also include a 150-room hotel and KOA campground. What do you think, man?
I got to wipe the smile off my face first. Remember when Crown Point did something similar when Bo Jackson came here about 7 years ago, and they had this big hoop-to-do press conference about a dome that Crown Point was going to build? For all I know, it may be up by now. It took a long time to get developers, town officials, everybody to get on the same page as far as funding, construction. But we waited and waited and waited for this thing, and it was basically the same speech. It wasn't as large and expansive, but they said that it would bring in all this revenue and it could be used year-round. First of all, I don't know if Portage needs a hotel. I think they've got 1 or 2 on Ridge Road or Route 6.
And they've got some right there on 94. I think there's one hotel in the park there.
It says, to me, it screams out seasonal. Maybe in the winter and fall, they'll do some good business. But in the summer, everybody's outside. I mean, and I know as adults, it's hard to get fields anymore because all the fields have been taken from adult leagues and given to the young kids, which it should be. They're the ones that need recreation and ways to kill time. So during the summer and the spring and the fall, they're outside. I don't know how they're going to benefit or how they're going to be excited about going indoors because they're going to have to pay. There's going to be fees. There's going to be fees for leagues, camps, whatever. I just wonder if it's too big. Maybe, if they had just one smaller dome where during the winter you could, you could play soccer, you could have softball, baseball camps because they are able to do that in these domes. They've got field turf set up. They've got the real dimensions, actual dimensions of an infield. So that would make sense. But I just think right now it's too big a pipe dream for this area and for Portage. I see something like that maybe happening in Indianapolis or in the Chicago area. I just don't know if it will catch on, and that's a lot of money.
I'm with, of course you and I are naturally we question things naturally. That's what we do. And, Al, I take my my nephew on Mondays. By the way, Brian, you need to remind me, I need to pick up Jack from school today for my sister, right? I'm I get these 2 nephews. I hang around a lot, so I get a lot of time with them. But I take my nephew out to the Crown Point Dome. I didn't even realize this. The first time I took him, I got lost for 45 minutes because there's 2 Crown Point domes. Yeah. I didn't know that. So I went to the older dome, and we're walking in, and the guy's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Well, he's got practice at 5 o'clock with Bobby Morris's team." And he's like, "Yeah, well, you need to go here and hang a right and a left." And of course, I don't know the names of the roads in Crown Point as well as I thought I did. So next thing you know, and then out of a clearing, comes this massive, massive dome. I mean, it's huge dome, and there's nobody there. As a matter of fact, we would go and play catch. And then I think they're not hurting, but they want to make revenue so much. I would get there early with that. I would get there at 4, things at 5. We go out and we sit down, and we're going to play catch, and we got to come out and pay $5 to play catch. Because during the day they opened it up from 8 to 5. There was only one guy there, kicking field goal. Oh, and Crown Point Dave, he's playing catch with his daughter. I mean, I don't even know. They made $10 from those two guys or 15, and just adding it up, how much to keep the dome going and all that. Plus, there's 2 domes in Crown Point. The other one is a guy out of Munster here. I grew up with him, Mark Leiden. He's had real success with, in basketball. The field house,
which closed.
But he had a real success with it in Indianapolis. Yeah. So he's like, why don't I bring this to the region? And he could just never make it go. And
he tried volleyball. He tried soccer.
He tried everything there, and he could just never get the revenues up to just match those expenses. And he just closed it, and it's an empty facility right now. So Chesterton taking a pass, Hobart taking a pass. Everybody knows the risk here, partly because the high cost. I mean, they're going to try to bring in massive tournaments and make it a destination. I don't know, man. I'm glad that they're doing something, but in the end, it's just I hope that the taxpayers aren't left footing the bill.
The last time I could remember hearing about one of the domes in Crown Point being used, Andrean's football team, for a couple of years when they were deep in the playoffs, used it to practice indoors because it was either nasty outside with snow or bitter cold. So Phil Mason would take the team there. And I think one year, another school from the area practiced indoors at one of those domes. It was just basically walk-through type of practice. But other than that, it's not on the tip of everybody's tongue when it comes to conversations. The Bo Jackson thing, I haven't heard anything about it. And I'm assuming it's up and operational.
Well,
but
I mean, there's 2 domes there. I don't know if the city owns one and one's private or whatever, but there's 2 domes in Crown Point. And I can tell you just from seeing it, they're not used all day long.
Was that originally planned that way? Because we were told, or at the Moose conferences I went to, that this was a first of its kind coming to Crown Point, and now you say there are 2 of them. You don't need a movie theater. You've already got the IMAX theaters on Route 6 in Portage, which are glamorous and glorious. I mean, they're huge. My daughter, we live in Highland. She goes there with her friends. So why do you need another movie theater inside, one of these structures? The hotel, nobody really. Again, it's a real shot. The target isn't that big, and the arrow is huge. And I'm just thinking you're going to miss on this, on the objective, because it's not that unique anymore. The area that it's in, the clientele. Sports is to the point now where, if you want to compete somewhere or practice somewhere, I know gym time is difficult, but outside is still the best place to do it. So you're talking about a limited area or a limited time that you can actually go to these bubbles, which would be winter.
Well, they're more talking about massive tournaments and conventions, and I get that part of it. So there may be the opportunity to bring people in from the outside.
But, Jim, there's tournaments everywhere. Everybody's got tournaments.
Yeah, but they got to have facilities to put them
in.
I know. Soccer.
They go to Vegas. They go to Vegas. There are so many AAU tournaments now, and they're in Vegas. They're out west where the weather's good, the scenery's gorgeous. You don't need something like this in Portage, Indiana, to draw people from around the country.
Let's go to Carl on line 1. Hey, Carl, what's going on, bud?
Not much. I hope you don't mind. I was going to redirect the conversation.
Sure, go ahead.
Looking at school physical education programs, in my experience, it's either been organized recess or an effort to groom out students for whatever sport was in season. Meanwhile, you've got some kid who easily could be described as looking like 130 pounds of chewed bubble gum, who's never gotten off the game system and is in desperate need of real physical education, being taught how to do calisthenics, how to, work out effectively, and maybe even put some health and nutrition in that mix. Looking for your commentary on that.
Al?
I think it's a travesty that we don't have physical education anymore at the schools. When Jim and I went, and probably anybody in this room that's over 35 years of age, you had 4 years of PE. Then it was cut back to 2. Then it was cut back to 1. You're right. There's a lot of fat, lazy kids walking around with a joystick in their hand that need to break a sweat. And I've been told, I don't know whether this is just BS or not, but I've been told that if you're actually in an activity like band, you play in the school band, that suffices for 1 year of PE, which is ridiculous. But you're right, we do need some kind of organized exercise, because it used to be, and you hear this all the time, you could drive by any park in northwest Indiana in the summer, and you'd see kids out there playing baseball, softball, basketball. Now, unless they have a uniform on and an organized practice, these parks are empty for the most part. Kids just don't want to go out and break a sweat. Not every kid, but more and more kids every year.
What do you think, Carl? Hey, Stuff, I want to talk. We got some other calls. Thanks, buddy. Good points. AM 1230 WJOB. Joe's calling from Portage. Joe, what do you think about Al's comments about the sport resort?
Well, I think it's really disappointing that here we are again weighing in on being critical about something that could happen, might happen. Anything that we do in life always has a risk. And in order to give a balanced perspective, what I would recommend is that you invite Mayor Snyder, the City Council President Mark Aprisco, and Tony Zappola from the Sport Resort on your show to talk about the benefits of this opportunity that we have in Portage.
Hold on a second. I appreciate the programming suggestions, but go straight to the heart of the matter. What are the benefits to Portage?
The city of Portage right now does have other, like for instance, in the summertime, Portage is one of the destinations for the BMX bike, the organized BMX bike rally, I guess, if you will. It's a week-long project, thousands of people to Portage, and it's overlooked.
Hold on a second. I've done the mountain biking in that thing. What is that place called? It's like Paradise Cove or something like that.
Imagination Glen Park.
Imagination Glen. And you know what? Off topic here. I've talked about it on the air as how I never knew that existed until my brother-in-law took me over there, because it is one of the top mountain biking trails that you can ride in the whole Midwest, and it's right there in Portage that nobody knows about. I agree with you entirely.
Absolutely. There's a lot of hidden gems, and the city council and the mayor are working to make Portage a destination. We tend to criticize things that are new and innovative because this didn't work here, this didn't work there. And I think that just sitting on the radio bad-mouthing something without having all the facts, I believe, is doing a disservice to our region.
Okay, you've made two programming suggestions for us, and I got it. You want us to have somebody on, and we're not doing our job right. But I want to know why this will work, okay? I take that criticism. I get it all the time, and I'm good with it, okay?
Who pays for this?
I mean, that's what we're trying to get to. Does the city of Portage have any exposure on the tax dollars?
I haven't followed it completely to the nth degree. My understanding, this is a private development. This has been a redevelopment project. The city owned 100 and some acres of land over there on the north side of 94 that they were very careful about selling to the sport resort for development. They vetted this project. It took quite a long time for it to go through the process, and the The city officials have found that this to be a benefit to the community. I have faith in our city officials, and that's why I stand behind them.
Okay, but, Al and I have been doing this a long time, and we've got a little bit of concern in that guys that we know, Mark Lydon tried to make a similar but smaller project run on the south part of Lake County. You've got two domes in Crown Point that I can just tell you from visually visiting them, they've got challenges ahead of them. How do we get behind a project when all these other ones are already struggling?
Well, that's why you're speaking to the wrong person. I, as a Portage citizen, believe in my elected officials are making the right decisions on my behalf. And if questions like you're posing to me are being asked of a person that's not intimately involved in it, that's why I think that there needs to be someone who is intimately involved to be able to answer that for the benefit of your listeners.
Hey, you know what? Thanks for your call, Joe. And I just want to make it clear that we ask the questions, and in the end, thanks a lot. It's got a lot of background noise. In the end, we want to see it go and work and bring new jobs to the community. We're just been around here so long that we've seen so many people fleece our local governments that you get a little bit cynical. Maybe that's what happens.
How many times has there been a pro team coming to Northwest Indiana, basketball, baseball, whatever, and it falls on its face? The planning is poor, the interest is lacking, the cost is too high. I think this is too big, too soon, and I'd be interested to see, okay, if the taxpayers don't get stuck with paying for this, what are the fees going to be, the rental costs? And what's going to happen is your leagues are going to take it over. The guy on the street, your kid, the average kid down the street isn't going to be able to use it because he's not part of an elite group like a league that can come in and pay some kind of a fee to, use it for 30 minutes or an hour.
Al, they've already done that at Munster Community. You can't just go on the field during the regular day.
Which field are you talking about?
I'm talking about any of them on Munster Community.
Oh, to use a field.
You can't just go there as a regular person and use a field because they're
right.
locked because we work on them and they're game fields.
St. John Ice
Yeah,
Arena.
remember, the same thing.
That's honestly, if you ask where my questions come from, St. John Ice Arena stuck that town and hurt their finances. It was horrible the way that all went down, and there was a number of contractors that got stuck with not getting paid for work they did.
Yeah, but that's almost always.
I know, but it's
And you had three different professional teams, hockey teams, from three different, minute leagues.
Listen, I got a
play
suggestion.
There, and nobody knows about the place.
I have a suggestion for Portage, and I'm a business owner, and I want it to succeed. I want all business to succeed. High tide rises all boats here in Northwest Indiana. But if we don't know about it, don't call the radio station and suggest that we have someone. I would call your mayor and your public relations department and ask why we don't know about it. That's your responsibility to sell your project. It's not our responsibility over here to promote your project. Your responsibility is to get the word out and sell it to your residents because you're the taxpayers that are paying for it, but also those individuals who you want to come and use it. And I would only say this about all those things because you have the one that's proposed in Hammond right down the street. I think all that's great. But there's a saturation point. And I say the same thing about these breweries, very similar. How many microbreweries can you have in one place? I hope they all succeed, but there's a saturation point. How many teams can you come in? I hope they're all built out to the seam. They bulge at the seams. Do you think that's going to happen, though, really? Do you think that they can run every weekend in Hammond right down the street, in Crown Point right down the street, in St. John, in Portage? We'll find out, but I'll guarantee you one thing as a business owner, I don't want any part of that.
Hey, let's see what Dennis is doing. Final phone call. How you been, Dennis?
Yeah, I've been okay.
You got to talk up a little bit, okay?
Yeah, I've been okay. I agree with you guys. The $64,000 question is how much skin does Portage have to put in the game? But I think we are tainted by the experience in Crown Point, who seems to not be able to succeed at these things. There is a huge market for these youth sports tournaments all over the country. I'm at the age where I'm driving around on weekends to middle of nowheres, and all of a sudden there's 500 kids at a youth sports tournament for the weekend, and there is a giant market for it. One of my complaints with the Lincoln Center we have here in Highlands is if I take my kid over there during the week to shoot baskets, they won't put a basket down, but on the weekend there's 500 kids from all over the Midwest there, playing basketball games in a tournament, and people smoking cigarettes and drinking beer out in the parking lot. So I think the market is there. Crown Point, for whatever reason, has badly failed to execute at it, but I think there is a market out there for it. That field house in Crown Point, that thing was packed every night, every hour of every day. But then Crown Point jumps in the middle of some business deal that apparently hasn't materialized yet. A pharmaceutical place hasn't stepped into that building yet. And how long does it take to put together a warehouse? 6 months or something like that, and there's nothing going on out there. So Crown Point, whether it be Plasmatronics or that thing Bo Jackson had, or the field house, doesn't seem to be able to pull this stuff off. But I do believe the market's out there.
The planning has to be exceptional. The financing has to be exceptional. Speaking of Crown Point, they have the World Series every summer, the girls' softball World Series, where teams from all over the country come. I mean, the papers have covered it very, very well, where you'll see all of Main Street covered with kids just walking down the street on the first day when you meet everybody and you exchange pins and all that stuff. Well, I saw this World Series of softball. Then I find out it's not really a World Series. You pay an entry fee wherever you live, Utah, California. You pay an entry fee and you join the tournament. You have not gone at another level to qualify for this World Series. It's basically a pay-and-play tournament.
Yeah, and there's 1,000 of those going on
Exactly.
around the country every weekend, and they all call themselves, World Series or World Championship or whatever. But they're out there, and if Portage can get a chunk of that market, good luck to them. I hope they're able to, and hopefully they didn't put too much skin in the game, but the way economic development is these days, they probably got something in there.
You got it, man. Hey, thanks for your call. Hey, we got to talk about bad traffic. How bad is it, Big Rich?
Hey, good morning, Jed and Al and Dave. So I went the toll road to the Skyway. Once you get off the Skyway to the Meg Ryan, it's slammed solid all the way in the local and express lanes. There's a little bit of an accident right by Cellular Field in a